Welcome students for the next session of the life process in living organism. Yes. Now, next part that we are going to study is electron transfer chain. In the previous lecture, we have discussed about the TCA cycle operates in the mitochondria and why TCA cycle operates for the generation of ATP. Yes. So, it is called as metabolic pathways, and this different metabolic pathways, for example glycolysis and TCA, they operate one by one, and due to that energy is produced in the each and every cell of the body. So electron transfer chain reaction is one of the important reaction in the metabolic pathways for the production of energy. Energy is produced in the form of ATP, as we have already studied. Yes. Now, what happens actually in the electron transfer chain? Molecules of NADH2 and FADH2 are formed during the processes. The processes that I have told you in the previous lecture. So, aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, in which the end product of TCA cycle, that is tricarboxylic acid cycle, TCA cycle, end product of the TCA cycle is production of ATPs, and the end product of glycolysis is pyruvic acid, and then acetyl CoA is produced. Yes. So how it is produced? By number of reactions occur together. That number of reactions lead to conversion of one form of substance into the another form, and the reaction goes on continuously occurring, and ultimately the pyruvic acid is produced. Pyruvic acid ultimately is converted into acetyl CoA. This acetyl CoA acts as a cofactor for operation of tricarboxylic acid cycle. So when this acetyl CoA enters into the tricarboxylic acid cycle, what happens? TCA cycle operates. Yes. So what I would like to tell you is, molecule of NADH2 and FADH2 formed during all above processes participate in electron transfer chain reaction. Due to this, 3 molecules of ATP are obtained from each NADH2 molecule and 2 molecules of ATP from each FADH2 molecules. Beside ATP, water molecules are also formed in this reaction. Yeah. So as I said, this NADH2 and FADH2 are the enzymes, and actually they carry out the process of electron transfer. So NADH2 is called as nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and FADH2 is flavin adenine dinucleotide. Both enzymes are formed in the cell and used in the cellular respiration. So these enzymes carry out the process of electron transfer from one substance to the another substance in the chemical reactions, and the energy is produced. So what I said, 3 molecules of ATP are obtained from NADH2 molecule. One NADH2 molecule gives 3 ATP molecules, and this one FADH2 molecule gives 2 molecules of ATP. So So let me explain you that. In the biochemical pathway, when NADH2 and FADH2 is involved, and when it is broken down, then one molecule of NADH2 gives 3 molecule of ATP, and one molecule of FADH2 give 2 ATP. So in this way, the energy is generated, and beside of ATP, yes, ATP is not only produced in the process, but also what is produced? Water molecules are formed in this reaction. Water molecules are also produced in this reaction. So along with ATP, water is also produced and CO2 is released. Okay, and energy is generated. This electron transport chain takes place in the cytoplasm of the mitochondria. As I said, TCA cycle operates in the mitochondria, cytoplasm of the mitochondria, and whatever the energy is produced is what? ATP. What is the full form of ATP? Is adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate is the energy rich molecule, and energy is stored in the bonds by which phosphate group are attached to each other. I have shown you the structure that one pentose sugar is there, one nitrogen base is there, and 3 phosphate groups are there in the ATP molecule. So it is named as adenosine triphosphate. So 3 molecules of phosphate is triphosphate. So they are attached with the bonds. So when this one of the bond is broken down, energy is released, energy is liberated, and that is used by the cell for the various purposes. 3 phosphate group are attached by bond each other, as I said. So as per the need, energy is derived by breaking the phosphate bond of the ATP. Hence, ATP is called as energy currency of the cell. Molecules of glucose is completely oxidized in aerobic respiration. Now this is very important point to note, that molecule of glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen in aerobic respiration, and molecules of CO2 and H2O is produced. So CO2 is produced and H2O is produced along with the energy. If there is insufficient amount of carbohydrates in the body due to exceptional condition like fasting and hunger, then lipid and protein are used for energy production. Lipids and proteins are used for the energy production. Yeah. Now we have learned that glucose molecule is broken down in the presence of oxygen. Then that type of respiration is called as aerobic respiration, and the respiration that takes place in the absence of oxygen is called as anaerobic respiration. So usually in higher animals, what happens? Aerobic respiration occurs. Next point that we are going to study is how energy is obtained from the food that we eat. Whatever the food that we eat, which contains carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So these are the energy rich molecules from where we can get the energy. So very common source is carbohydrate and abundantly available, then the fat, and then protein. So if there is insufficient amount of carbohydrates in the body, and when this condition will occur if the person is fasting, so then lipids and proteins are used for energy production. Lipids can also be used for the energy production, and proteins can also be used for the energy production. Fatty acids and amino acids are converted into acetyl CoA. So, how fatty acids are produced and how amino acids are produced? When lipids are broken down by the enzymes, then it converts the lipid into small fatty acids. And when protein is digested by the enzyme, it converts it into many type of amino acids present in that protein. Are converted into, so fatty acids and amino acids are converted into actually what? Acetyl CoA, and energy is obtained through complete oxidation of acetyl CoA by the process of Krebs cycle in mitochondria. So Krebs cycle, TCA cycle is not different because these are the different name of same chemical pathway, same metabolic pathway. Tricarboxylic acid cycle, Krebs cycle, it is also called as Kelvin cycle. So these are the same many names of same metabolic pathway. And what we have learned in this point, that this, if carbohydrates are not sufficiently available or the stored food carbohydrates that is in the form of glycogen, that is also exhausted due to fasting condition, then body metabolism shifts for the digestion of fats and protein for the production of energy. Next point, tricarboxylic acid cycle. Both molecule of acetyl CoA enter the mitochondria. And how they may enter the mitochondria? When glycolysis operate in the cell cytoplasm, and what is produced? Acetyl CoA as an end product is produced by the glycolysis. Then that acetyl CoA enters inside the cytoplasm of mitochondria where TCA cycle operates. Where it enters? It enters into the cytoplasm of mitochondria, means the matrix of the mitochondria where TCA cycle operates. So take a note of it that glycolysis operates in the cell cytoplasm and tricarboxylic acid cycle operates in the matrix of the mitochondria. And then when acetyl CoA enters the mitochondria, cyclic chain of reactions, that is tricarboxylic acid cycle, operates and the energy is produced. Now acetyl CoA is the cofactor, and the acetyl part of the acetyl CoA is completely oxidized. Let me repeat, acetyl part of acetyl CoA is completely oxidized through this cyclical process, and molecules like CO2, H2O, NADH2, FADH2 are derived. So CO2 and H2O are the end products, and NADH2 and FADH2 are derived. So it is energy rich molecule. Always remember, NADH2 and FADH2, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide and flavin adenine dinucleotide, are the energy molecules produced in the metabolic pathway. Energy production in microorganism through anaerobic respiration. So first of all, I told you aerobic respiration means the respiration carried out by the organism in presence of oxygen is aerobic respiration. And what is anaerobic respiration? The respiration carried out by the organism in absence of oxygen is anaerobic respiration. So some organisms cannot live in presence of oxygen. They perform anaerobic respiration for energy production. They perform anaerobic respiration. Glycolysis and fermentation are two steps of anaerobic respiration. Two steps of anaerobic respiration. First is glycolysis, second is fermentation. Glucose is incompletely oxidized and less amount of energy is obtained in this type of respiration. What happens? Glucose is incompletely oxidized and less amount of energy is obtained in this anaerobic respiration. Why less amount of energy occurs in this respiration? Because it is not so economical biochemical pathway that produces a lot of ATP. So that is why anaerobic respiration doesn't occur in higher organisms, because higher organisms need much more energy. So that is produced by the aerobic respiration. Pyruvic acid produced through the glycolysis is converted into other organic acid or alcohol with the help of some enzymes. So in anaerobic respiration, pyruvic acid is converted into organic acid or alcohol by the process of fermentation. Some higher plants, animal and anaerobic microorganisms also perform anaerobic respiration. Now this is the exceptional case that some higher plants, animals and aerobic microorganisms also perform anaerobic respiration. So let me tell you how. Instead of aerobic respiration, if there is a depletion in the oxygen level of surrounding, what happens? Then such organisms start carrying out anaerobic respiration. So here I have mentioned the examples. Seed of the plant perform anaerobic respiration if the soil is submerged under water during germination. So what is that? Seeds perform anaerobic respiration if the soil is submerged under water during germination. In such case, the seeds carry out anaerobic respiration. Similarly, our muscle cells also perform the anaerobic respiration when we are carrying out the exercise. First of all, there is aerobic respiration when there is increased demand of the oxygen. Then what happens? The concentration of oxygen depletes. So in depleted oxygen concentration, what muscle cells do, they carry out the anaerobic respiration, and in this way anaerobic respiration can also occur in the human cells. And one thing again happens because of the anaerobic respiration in the muscle cell. Lactic acid is produced in the muscle cell in anaerobic respiration, and due to the production of lactic acid in the muscle, muscle becomes tired and they cannot carry out the further work. So lactic acid accumulates, due to which we feel tired. Energy from different food components. Now simply from amino acids, various type of proteins are produced, and this various type of proteins are used in different organ of the human body or any living organism, and different organs are produced. For example, different combinations of amino acids can produce different proteins. So such combinations can produce bone protein, that is osin, various proteins of cell membrane, and also produce various enzymes. Then pancreas, which is digestive gland, can produce insulin and trypsin, which controls the blood sugar level. Pituitary glands produces many type of hormones which controls the body processes and growth and development. Molecules like actin and myosin, which is present in the muscle protein. Blood hemoglobin and antibodies are nothing but the protein. Skin melanin and keratin is nothing but the made up of protein. So melanin of the skin is protein, and keratin protein is present in the hairs and the nail. So they are made up of protein and how these different type of proteins are produced by the different combinations of the amino acids. Now, excess of carbohydrates are stored in the liver and muscle in the form of glycogen. So some of the carbohydrates are stored in the muscle and rest of is stored in the liver as a glycogen, which act as a storage of food. And whenever there is a need of this food, stored food, it is broken down and energy is produced. So next question is that what is the source of protein and what are they made up of? So as I said, source for carbohydrate is freely available. Anything you eat, you can get easily many type of carbohydrates, but for protein you have to take a specific diet, specific food products. Proteins are actually macromolecules formed by bonding together many amino acids. So many amino acid bond to each other by the peptide bonds, and this bonding forms the one complex protein. Protein is very essential for the body of any organism because all the parts of the organism, body parts, are made up of protein mainly, and then carbohydrates, lipids also needed. Protein of animal origin is called as first class protein, and such protein can give you energy, that 4 kilocalorie of energy per gram of protein. So if you consume 1 gram of protein, then it can give you 4 kilocalorie energy, which is less than the carbohydrate, or it is less than the energy obtained from the lipid. Amino acids are obtained after digestion of proteins. Those amino acids are absorbed in the body and transports up to each organ and cell via blood. From these amino acids, organs and cells produce various proteins necessary for themselves. So likewise, body produces different type of proteins by the combinations of various amino acids. Now in case of lipids, from where do we obtain the lipids? Lipids also available freely and very easily. So the question arises that what is the use of lipid? The substance formed by specific chemical bond between fatty acid and alcohol are called lipids. So the bonding of fatty acid and alcohol together forms the lipid. And what is the function of the lipid in the body? It is useful for the plasma membrane of the cell, the coverings of the neuronal cell, and it also acts as a good source of energy. So that is why lipid is also necessary in the body. And how lipid is produced? By the bonding of fatty acid and alcohol. Digestion of lipids consumed by us is nothing but their conversion into fatty acid and alcohol. So ultimately, when lipid is digested and broken down, what is the product that we get from is fatty acid and alcohol. Fatty acids are absorbed up and distributed in the body by the circulation. From those fatty acids, different cells produce various substances necessary to themselves. So these fatty acids are used by various cells for different purposes, and that purposes are, for example, the molecules called as phospholipids, which are essential for producing plasma membrane, is one of the important function of the lipid, that it produces the covering of the cell, which is also called as cell membrane. Fatty acids are also used for producing hormones like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, aldosterone, etc. are the hormones which are produced with the help of lipids, in the sense of actually fatty acids after the digestion of lipid. Covering around the axons of nerve cell. Covering of the nerve cell is axons is produced by what? Is produced by fatty acids. We get 9 kilocalorie of energy per gram of lipid. It is much more than the carbohydrate and the proteins. Lipids are stored in the adipose connective tissue in the body. Lipids are stored in the adipose connective tissue, and it also act as an insulator for the body, which protects from the cold weather, because it act as an insulator in our body, and heat of our body is not lost out of the body. So that is the function of the lipid. Thank you. So if you have further doubts, you have to ask it and get it clear. Thank you.